I still remember the exact moment my life fell apart. One minute, I was sitting across from the most powerful man I'd ever met, my billionaire boss. The next, I was carrying a cardboard box filled with my belongings, walking out of the company I'd sacrificed 3 years of my life for. No warning. No second chance. Just 4 cold words. You're fired. Effective immediately. I stood there in shock, staring at him, waiting for an explanation that never came. What hurt the most wasn't losing my job. It was losing him. Because somewhere between late-night meetings, endless business trips, and stolen glances across conference rooms, I had fallen in love with the one man I could never have. And now he was throwing me out of his life like I meant nothing. I cried all the way home. My name is Emma, and until the day I was fired, I believed my life was finally heading in the right direction. At 26 years old, I had what most people would call a dream job. I worked as an executive assistant at one of the largest investment companies in New York. The pay was good. The office was beautiful. And every morning, I walked through those glass doors feeling proud of how far I'd come. What nobody knew was how hard I had fought to get there. I wasn't born into money. I didn't have wealthy parents or powerful connections. My mother raised me alone after my father abandoned us when I was 8 years old. She worked 2 jobs for most of my childhood just to keep food on the table. There were nights when she skipped dinner so I could eat. Back then, I promised myself something. One day, I would take care of her. One day, she would never have to struggle again. That promise became my motivation. I studied harder than everyone else. Worked longer hours. Sacrificed weekends and holidays. And eventually, all that effort paid off. Or at least I thought it did. Because everything changed the day I met Ethan Blackwood. The CEO. The billionaire owner of the company. And the man who would completely turn my world upside down. The first time I saw him, I understood immediately why everyone in the office talked about him. He was tall, confident, and carried himself with the kind of authority that made people straighten their posture when he entered a room. Employees respected him. Investors trusted him. Competitors feared him. He was the definition of success. Unfortunately, he was also completely intimidating. The first conversation we ever had lasted less than 30 seconds. I accidentally spilled coffee on an important report during a meeting. My hands were shaking. I expected him to yell at me. Instead, he simply handed me a napkin and said, "Everyone makes mistakes once. Just don't make the same one twice." Then he walked away. Simple. Professional. Cold. But strangely kind. After that day, our paths crossed more often. As the company expanded, I was assigned to help coordinate several executive projects. That meant spending more time around Ethan. At first, our interactions were strictly business. Emails. Schedules. Meetings. Travel arrangements. Nothing personal. Nothing inappropriate. Just work. Yet over time, I began noticing things nobody else seemed to see. The way he stayed late after everyone left. The way he secretly paid medical expenses for employees facing emergencies. The way he remembered small details about people's lives. He wasn't the arrogant billionaire everyone assumed he was. Behind that cold exterior was someone carrying invisible burdens. And for reasons I couldn't explain, I found myself wanting to know more. Of course, that was a dangerous thought. Because Ethan Blackwood wasn't just my boss. He lived in a completely different world. A world of private jets. luxury penthouses, and billion-dollar deals. Meanwhile, I was still living in a small apartment with my mother. Our realities couldn't have been more different. So I buried my feelings. Or at least I tried to. But feelings don't disappear just because they're inconvenient. Every day, they grew a little stronger. Every smile meant more. Every conversation lasted too short. Every goodbye felt strangely disappointing. And before I realized what was happening, I had fallen for a man I could never have. A man who barely seemed to notice I existed. At least, that's what I thought. Because while I was busy hiding my feelings, Ethan was hiding something far more dangerous. Something that would soon destroy everything. And it all started with a meeting that should never have happened. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday evening. At first, nothing seemed unusual about it. Last-minute meetings happened all the time at Blackwood Investments. Big clients. Important contracts. Emergency negotiations. It was part of the business. But this one felt different. The entire executive floor was tense. People whispered in hallways. Senior managers looked nervous. Even Ethan seemed more serious than usual. Around 6 o'clock, his office phone rang. A few minutes later, his secretary approached my desk. "Mr. Blackwood needs you in the conference room." I grabbed my tablet and followed her. When I entered, several unfamiliar faces were already seated around the table. Expensive suits. Luxury watches. Cold expressions. The kind of people who were used to getting whatever they wanted. Ethan stood at the head of the table. His face revealed nothing. As always. The meeting began immediately. For nearly 2 hours, numbers and contracts filled the room. Most of it was beyond my pay grade. I simply took notes and organized documents. But then something strange happened. One of the investors mentioned a company called Sterling Holdings. The moment those words left his mouth, Ethan's expression changed. Only for a second. But I noticed. A flash of anger. Pain. Maybe even fear. Then it disappeared. Like it had never been there. The meeting ended shortly before 9. Everyone left. Everyone except Ethan. I gathered my notes and prepared to leave. "Emma." His voice stopped me. I turned around. "Yes." For a moment, he looked like he wanted to say something. Something important. But instead, he shook his head. "Nothing. Have a safe trip home." I smiled politely. "You too." Then I left. I had no idea that would be the last normal conversation we'd ever have. The next morning started like any other. Coffee. Emails. Schedules. Meetings. Everything seemed fine. Until around noon. My phone rang. It was my mother. The moment I heard her voice, my stomach dropped. She sounded weak. Scared. "Emma." "Mom, what's wrong?" There was silence. Then she spoke. The words shattered my world. "The doctor found something." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" Another pause. Then she started crying. "It's serious." I left work immediately. The hospital felt cold and endless. Every hallway seemed darker than usual. Every second felt heavier. The doctor explained everything carefully. But all I heard were fragments. Tests. Treatment. Surgery. Risk. Cost. A lot of cost. Far more money than I had. Far more money than we could ever afford. When the doctor left, my mother squeezed my hand. I'm sorry. I looked at her in disbelief. Sorry for what? For becoming a burden. Tears filled my eyes instantly. She had spent her entire life sacrificing everything for me. And now she thought she was a burden. No. My voice cracked. You are never a burden. I held her hand for a long time that night. Making the same promise I'd made as a little girl. I would save her. No matter what it cost. No matter what I had to do. The following week became a nightmare. Hospital visits. Phone calls. Financial meetings. Rejected loan applications. Endless stress. I barely slept. Barely ate. And somehow, Ethan noticed. One evening, after most employees had gone home, he walked past my desk. Then stopped. You look exhausted. I forced a smile. I'm fine. He stared at me. Not convinced. You don't have to lie. For some reason, hearing those words nearly broke me. I looked away before he could see the tears forming. But he already had. And for the first time since I'd known him, his cold mask slipped. Just a little. Enough for me to see genuine concern. Enough for me to realize that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as invisible to him as I thought. But before either of us could say anything else, the elevator doors opened. And a man stepped onto the executive floor. A man whose arrival instantly changed Ethan's expression. The warmth vanished. His face turned ice cold. The stranger smiled. But there was nothing friendly about it. And the moment Ethan saw him, I knew one thing. Whoever this man was, he was trouble. The man walked across the executive floor as if he owned the building. Every employee who saw him immediately moved out of his way. Not because they respected him. Because they were uncomfortable around him. Even from a distance, I could feel the tension. He looked to be in his early 30s. Expensive suit. Perfect smile. Cold eyes. The kind of person who seemed charming until you looked a little closer. Then something darker appeared beneath the surface. Ethan. The stranger's voice echoed through the office. Ethan's jaw tightened instantly. Victor. The way he said the name told me everything. These two men clearly had history. And not the good kind. Victor glanced toward me. His eyes lingered for a second. Long enough to make me uncomfortable. Then he smiled. So this is Emma. My stomach tightened. How did he know my name? Ethan stepped forward immediately. Positioning himself slightly between us. A small movement. But I noticed. And apparently Victor did too. His smile widened. Interesting. Very interesting. What do you want? Ethan asked coldly. Victor laughed. Straight to business. You didn't answer my question. The atmosphere felt heavy. Dangerously heavy. Victor finally shrugged. I'm here regarding Sterling Holdings. The name again. The same company mentioned during the meeting. The same company that seemed to trigger something inside Ethan. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Victor leaned closer. You know the deadline is approaching. Ethan's eyes darkened. I said I'll handle it. You'd better. Victor's smile disappeared completely. And suddenly he looked far more dangerous than before. Because if you don't. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The threat was obvious. A few seconds later, Victor turned around and walked away. The elevator doors closed behind him. Silence filled the office. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Finally, Ethan exhaled slowly, as if he'd been holding his breath the entire time. I wanted to ask questions. 1,000 questions. But before I could say anything, he looked at me. Go home, Emma. What? Now? His tone wasn't rude. It was protective. Urgent. Almost worried. Something was wrong. Very wrong. But I nodded anyway. Because whatever was happening clearly wasn't something he wanted me involved in. Unfortunately, life had other plans. The next morning, everything exploded. I arrived at work expecting another stressful day. Instead, I walked into chaos. Employees crowded around computer screens. Phones rang non-stop. Managers rushed through hallways. People were panicking. I hurried to my desk. What happened? One of my co-workers looked up. His face was pale. We've been hacked. My heart dropped. What? Confidential company files leaked online. Suddenly everything made sense. The panic. The emergency meetings. The terrified executives. Millions of dollars were at risk. Maybe more. Within minutes, the entire building went into crisis mode. Everyone worked non-stop. Trying to contain the damage. Trying to identify who was responsible. Hours passed. Then days. And somehow things kept getting worse. The media got involved. Investors started asking questions. Stock prices dropped. Pressure mounted from every direction. Nobody was safe. Nobody was trusted. Then came the day that changed my life forever. A Monday morning. Bright and sunny outside. A complete contrast to what was about to happen. At exactly 10 o'clock, I received a message. Mr. Blackwood would like to see you immediately. My heart raced. Something felt wrong. When I entered Ethan's office, he wasn't alone. 2 company lawyers stood beside him. Several documents sat on his desk. And the expression on his face, I'll never forget it. Cold. Distant. Emotionless. The same man who had shown concern for me days earlier was gone. Ethan. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pushed a folder across the desk. I opened it. Inside were printed emails. Financial reports. Security logs. And somehow, my name. Everywhere. I stared in confusion. I don't understand, one of the lawyers spoke first. The evidence suggests you were involved in the data breach. For a second, I thought I had misheard him. Then reality hit. They were accusing me of sabotaging the company. My hands started shaking. No. I looked directly at Ethan. No, that's impossible. His face revealed nothing. Absolutely nothing. And then he said the 4 words that destroyed my world. You're fired, Emma. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. The words echoed inside my head. You're fired, Emma. No explanation. No discussion. No chance to defend myself. Just a sentence that instantly destroyed everything I had worked for. I stared at Ethan. Waiting. Praying. Hoping he would say this was a mistake. That he knew I would never betray the company. That he trusted me. But he said nothing. His expression remained cold. Professional. Distant. As if I were just another employee. As if the last 3 years meant absolutely nothing. No. My voice trembled. There has to be some mistake. One of the lawyers slid another document toward me. The company has sufficient evidence to terminate your employment immediately. I barely looked at the paper. My eyes never left Ethan. Ethan. The moment his name left my lips, something flickered in his eyes. Pain. Regret. Something. But it disappeared so quickly I almost imagined it. Please tell them this isn't true. Silence. Tell them. Still nothing. The room felt smaller by the second. My chest tightened. Tears burned behind my eyes. But I refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. Not in front of him. Finally, Ethan spoke. His voice was colder than I had ever heard before. The decision is final. That was it. 3 years. Gone in a single sentence. I stood slowly. Every instinct inside me wanted to scream. To demand answers. To fight. But looking at Ethan's face, I realized it wouldn't matter. Whatever had happened, he had already made his choice. And it wasn't me. Without another word, I gathered my things and walked out. The entire office seemed to know. People stared. Whispered. Avoided eye contact. Humiliation followed me all the way to the elevator. When the doors finally closed, I broke. The tears came instantly. Hot. Uncontrollable. Painful. By the time I reached the parking lot, I could barely see through them. I sat inside my car and cried for nearly an hour. Not because of the job. At least not entirely. Jobs could be replaced. Careers could be rebuilt. What hurt was Ethan. The man I trusted. The man I secretly loved. The man who had looked me in the eyes and thrown me away without a second thought. That night was one of the worst nights of my life. And somehow it got even worse. When I arrived home, I found my mother sitting quietly on the couch. The medical bills were spread across the coffee table. Stacks of them. Unpaid. Growing larger every week. The sight nearly crushed me. Because now I had another problem. I wasn't just unemployed. I was unemployed while trying to save my mother's life. I forced a smile. Pretended everything was fine. But mothers always know. She studied my face carefully. What happened? I looked away. Nothing came out. My silence told her everything. Oh, sweetheart. The tears returned immediately. This time I couldn't stop them. My mother wrapped her arms around me while I cried like a child. And for the first time in years, I felt completely lost. The next few days blurred together. Job applications. Interviews. Rejections. More hospital visits. More bills. More stress. No matter how hard I tried, nothing improved. Then, exactly 1 week after being fired, everything changed. It was raining that evening. Heavy rain. The kind that makes the world feel smaller. I was sitting alone in the apartment when someone knocked on the door. I assumed it was a delivery driver. Or maybe a neighbor. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, my heart nearly stopped. Standing there was Ethan Blackwood. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Rain soaked his expensive suit. His dark hair was wet. And despite looking exhausted, his eyes never left mine. Shock quickly turned into anger. What are you doing here? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at me as though he hadn't seen me in years. Not 1 week. Years. Finally, he spoke. I need to talk to you. I laughed bitterly. Now you want to talk? Emma. No. The hurt I'd been carrying exploded. You don't get to show up here after what you did. His jaw tightened. But he didn't leave. I know. Do you? My voice cracked. Because last time I checked, you accused me of a crime I didn't commit. The rain continued falling around us. Neither of us moved. Then Ethan did something completely unexpected. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small black velvet box. My breath caught instantly. My brain refused to process what I was seeing. Because there was only one thing that belonged inside a box like that. An engagement ring. Slowly, Ethan opened it. A beautiful diamond sparkled under the porch light. I stared in absolute disbelief. Then he said the words that changed everything. Emma. His voice was quiet. Serious. Determined. Will you marry me? For a moment, I genuinely wondered if I was dreaming. Maybe the stress had finally broken me. Maybe I'd fallen asleep on the couch. Because nothing about this situation made sense. Absolutely nothing. 1 week ago, Ethan Blackwood had destroyed my career. Now he was standing on my doorstep in the rain, holding an engagement ring. Asking me to marry him. I stared at him. Then at the ring. Then back at him. Are you insane? The words escaped before I could stop them. Ethan didn't react. Didn't get angry. Didn't even look surprised. As if he had expected that response. Emma, please let me explain. I laughed. A harsh, disbelieving laugh. Explain what? I stepped outside. The rain immediately soaked my clothes. But I didn't care. Explain why you accused me of betraying your company. Explain why you humiliated me in front of everyone. Or explain why you're standing here with a ring after ruining my life. Each question hit harder than the last. And with every word, guilt appeared more clearly in Ethan's eyes. Good. He deserved to feel guilty. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Ethan took a slow breath. The evidence against you was fake. My heart skipped. What? It was planted. I stared at him. The anger inside me suddenly mixed with confusion. If you knew that. My voice shook. Then why did you fire me? His expression darkened. As though the answer itself hurt. Because keeping you at the company was becoming dangerous. Dangerous, I blinked. What are you talking about? Before Ethan could answer, another voice interrupted us. Emma. I turned around. My mother stood in the doorway. Looking confused. And very concerned. The moment Ethan saw her, his posture straightened respectfully. He immediately lowered the ring box. Mrs. Carter. My mother looked from Ethan to me. Then to the engagement ring. Then back to Ethan. Her confusion doubled. I feel like I missed several chapters. Under normal circumstances, I might have laughed. But nothing about this situation was normal. My mother invited Ethan inside. Mostly because she wanted answers. And honestly, so did I. 20 minutes later, we were sitting around the small kitchen table. The contrast felt almost ridiculous. One of the richest men in New York sitting in our tiny apartment. Drinking coffee from a chipped mug. Yet Ethan didn't seem uncomfortable. If anything, he looked strangely at home. Finally, I crossed my arms. Start talking. His eyes met mine. And for the first time since he'd arrived, I saw genuine fear. Not fear for himself. Fear for me. That's when I realized something. Whatever he was about to say, it was serious. Very serious. Ethan leaned forward. There are things about my family you don't know. I immediately frowned. What does that have to do with me? Everything. The answer came instantly. Without hesitation. Without doubt. Everything. A chill ran through me. Ethan looked down briefly. As if organizing years of secrets inside his head. Then he began. 20 years ago, my father built Blackwood Investments with another man. I listened carefully. He wasn't just a business partner. Ethan's jaw tightened. He was my father's best friend. Something about the way he said it made me uneasy. What happened? Ethan's eyes turned cold. Betrayal. The word hung heavily in the air. My father's partner stole millions of dollars and disappeared. My mother's expression changed immediately. And your father never found him? Oh, he found him. Ethan's voice became darker. Just not before it destroyed our family. I suddenly remembered another name. A name I'd heard repeatedly over the last few weeks. Sterling Holdings. Victor. The strange tension. The threats. Everything. Ethan. I leaned forward. Who was your father's partner? For the first time all night, Ethan hesitated. And that hesitation terrified me. Because it meant whatever came next was worse than I imagined. Much worse. Then he finally spoke. And the answer made the entire room go silent. Because the man who betrayed Ethan's family was connected to mine.